Thinking of waiting for the next first home buyer incentive before you buy? This could be a $30,000 mistake. Prices don't wait for politicians, and while you're hoping for a new scheme, the market could be moving on without you.
Yeah, we've seen buyers delay for months waiting for grants, only to miss out or actually get priced out of the market, or set their budget below the qualifying criteria, thus limiting their options artificially. And let's be real, not everyone qualifies when these incentives do come in, so it could be a big mistake to wait. Welcome to Your First Home Buyer Guide, the podcast for first home buyers who want to become educated home buyers.
I'm Veronica and that was Megan. We are two of Australia's most experienced buyer's agents and probably old enough to be your mum, which is a good thing because between us, we've got almost 50 years experience to share with you, and together we're going to cut through the BS and make sure that you're well informed so you make better decisions.
Now, when you get to the end of this episode, make sure you check out the website, homebuyeracademy.com.au. Take a look at our course for first home buyers.
We've created an easy-to-follow course that builds on all of our professional experience to take you step by step through the whole home buying journey.
You'll know exactly what to do, when to do it, and be able to find your first home faster and easier with our guidance along the way.
It's the next best thing to having your very own buyer's agent.
Now, before we get into the interesting stuff, in this week's episode, there's the boring bit to do, and that's the disclaimer.
You, of course, know that nothing in this podcast is to be taken as personal advice. We always recommend getting the advice of an expert in their field who takes their time to personally understand your situation. Now, we've done our very best to ensure that the content is correct at the time of recording, but things change rapidly, so always check with the relevant government authority or your trusted advisors, or both, to get the most up-to-date information.
Today we're talking about the temptation to delay your property search hoping to get a grant or incentive that is coming up in the future. This is a very small part of step 3 in our PACE system. So the PACE system is preparation, action, commitment, execution. And in there are 10 steps that we take you through when you do the first home buyer course. And so step 3 is part of preparation. It's called planning. And isn't it money? Was it step 2? Money. Well, it's a bit of both, really, isn't it?
A bit of both, really, isn't it?
A bit of both. A little bit of step 2 and a little bit of step 3 thrown in today.
Absolutely. Now, today we're diving into a topic that has become really common in conversations. Like, I'm hearing a lot of this and I'm seeing a lot of it on the TV and the media as well. Mm-hmm. So it's whether you should hit pause on your property plans and wait for some of these new government incentives before you buy. And look, we get it, right? We get it. The media loves to talk up the next grant that's coming up or the next scheme that could make your first home more affordable in their eyes. So it's very tempting to wait. And for some people, it feels like free money. But what if we told you that waiting for the next incentive might actually cost you more, both in terms of time and money?
Oh, yeah. You know, that is exactly right. There is this perception out there that it's a smart thing to do is to hold off and, you know, wait for the next federal budget or the next state announcement. And particularly when, you know, politicians do come in, like we had our federal election a few months back and it was like, okay, well, everyone's going to get 5%, you know, deposit scheme, you know, but you got to wait till the date, right? But whether
and then we don't know what the details are in terms of what the income limits are and the
that's it.
caps.
Yes. So you could be waiting for something that has been announced and you actually have a date, or you could be waiting for something that is talked about potentially as, you know, possible policy. You know, but every buyer is obviously waiting for a scheme that's going to give them a leg up, and so it could be a deposit boost or potentially a stamp duty savings. But here's the kicker, and there's a couple of kickers here, right? There's a few kickers, but here's one big kicker. While you're waiting, the property market could be moving without you. Prices might be rising, stock might be tightening, and in some cases you might actually miss out on the opportunities that were available to you today. And I guess what makes it even more frustrating is that there's no guarantee that those schemes, when they get announced, as you mentioned, you'll actually be eligible because you might fall outside whatever the rules are, right? We've seen, you know, countless people over the years fall just outside the income thresholds or find that the scheme only applies to certain property types or is capped in terms of the price that you're buying and you can't get what you want for less than that. So not only did they delay unnecessarily, but they also missed that window to buy a better property on their own terms.
Yeah. And look, this is where the incentive illusion comes in. So let's have a look at why these incentives sound so appealing. And it's completely understandable, right? We get it. When you're saving for a deposit, watching property prices climb and juggling rising rents, the idea of a grant or any kind of assistance feels like a lifeline. And sometimes that can push you over the line or make buying possible a little bit sooner. But what most buyers don't realise that these incentives are usually designed to stimulate the market. Now, that means that they often lead to a surge in demand. And when demand rises, so do prices. So that $10,000 grant that, let's say that's one that you're waiting for, it actually might be absorbed by like a $20,000 price hike in the time that you're waiting for the grant. Now you're not ahead, you're behind.
And this happens a lot because, in fact, Eliza Owen, I remember, wrote a report on this some years back, and she did all this research to show what happened to prices after every incentive and grant. A whole bunch of incentives and grants have been released in the country. And then, the immediate impact on prices, where prices usually went up more than the grant. More than the amount of the grant. So because you've got every other buyer doing the same thing you're doing, they're all waiting.
And they want to be under the price cap.
They all jump off the fence at the same time. And then what does lots of people trying to do the same thing at the same time in the price bracket all happen or do? They will push prices up.
Yep. And the media makes a big splash when there's a new scheme proposed or hinted at. But just because a politician talks about a scheme doesn't actually mean it will be introduced. We mentioned this earlier. Or it may not stick around for very long. Or it might have a capped number of places available and you might miss out on one of those places. They can be scrapped, they can be delayed, they can be watered down. They can be changed completely by the time they are passed. And even if they do go ahead, it's often a bit of a mad rush to access them and not everyone can.
No. It's funny because there was that first home buyer incentive in New South Wales just at the very end of the last Liberal government, and they brought that in. There were times when, and if anyone waited for the Labor government to come in, because the Labor government came in and scrapped it. So there was this, there wasn't really a waiting period. Everyone who piled in. But the simple fact is, if you are able to buy and you are holding off because you're expecting some sort of grant or some free money, that's when you're in a big danger zone, isn't it? Because if you are not actually ready to buy, this is all academic. Right? What we're talking about now is completely academic. But if you are ready to buy and you're thinking about holding on, then, you've got to be very, very careful because there's also the idea of opportunity costs. And this becomes really important now, right? So let's say that you're looking at buying a $600,000 home, which first home buyer isn't, but you decide to hold off for 6 or 12 months hoping for an incentive to come through. And if the market grows by just 5% in that time, which is not
pretty realistic.
Not unusual, especially in some pockets of, Sydney, Brisbane, or now even Melbourne's on the move again. That house could cost you $630,000 by the time you're ready to buy it. So you just paid $30,000 more, to wait for a $10,000 benefit. And on top of that, your borrowing capacity might have changed, interest rates could have moved, or your circumstances might have shifted. So what was once achievable starts to slip out of reach. And so there's also the emotional cost. We work with a lot of buyers who get stuck in what we call decision limbo. They're constantly refreshing news articles, waiting for announcements, feeling like they can't move forward. That stress builds up over time. They feel like they're stuck renting forever or watching friends get in the market while they keep waiting for that magic scheme to land. It's a little bit like trying to win lotto,
Except you've got a little bit more control here. And I think that's the point here and what we're talking about, Veronica. You actually do have a little bit of control because you can make decisions. Lotto, you can buy the ticket, but it's a lot less control.
Exactly right. I think that, it seems silly to not wait, but it can be many times sillier to wait.
Yeah, absolutely. And no one has a crystal ball, so you don't know what the market's going to do if you're waiting 12 months or 6 months or whatever the case may be. You can only go on what is around now. But, it's not about panic buying. It's actually just about being prepared. And look, I want to be really clear about this. We're not saying you should panic and rush out and buy. No, that's not what we're saying here. If you're not financially ready or you haven't done the groundwork to understand what a good property looks like, a good quality property looks like, then yeah, you should wait. You should absolutely, but not for the incentives. You should wait until you're ready. You're educated and you're ready. And that's where most people get stuck. They're waiting for some sort of external go signal, like somebody to tell them, this is the time, whether it's from the government or the market or a parent or a partner, instead of focusing on the things they actually can control. That's why we created the course. It's about putting you back in control, back in the driver's seat, educating you, helping you understand, identify what your goals are, map out your strategy based on facts, not just media hype or something that might happen in the future.
Well, because if you are relying on a government grant to make your first home dreams come true, that's probably a sign that you might need to step back and look at your overall plan, because incentives should be, as we often say, the cherry on top, not the whole cake, right? But, there are some good grants to take advantage of. I mean, don't get me wrong, that the first home buyer, they're all first home buyer incentives, aren't they? No, the one with the 5% deposit.
The 5% deposit, yeah, that one.
That is a plan that we like, right? But if you're in a position you can buy without needing to wait for that, and if in your area, whatever the caps are, that might preclude you from being part of it or might force you into a price bracket that everybody is going to also be in. Again, it could be a trap rather than freeing you up. Now, obviously, if something like that is the only way that you can get into the market, that's a very different conversation. But we don't want people who can otherwise buy holding off. In fact, that's probably not something a lot of people would hold off for, I would imagine. It's those the free money, the grants and incentives and the stamp duty concessions. And I remember, were you selling real estate when the first home buyer grant came in back in?
When was that?
2000? Was it year 2000?
No, I went into real estate in 2002.
So I started in the year 2000, and in July, I think it was July the 1st, lots of buyers. I remember dealing with buyers who were like first home buyers before that July the 1 who were saying, oh, no, we're going to wait because we're going to get our $7,000.
It was back then. It was $7,000 Queensland dollars. Remember? Yeah.
Years expensive.
The median house price in Brisbane was probably about, I don't know, 250, 300,000 at that time. So it was a good amount of money. But I can't remember what the caps were. I think there was all sorts of criteria.
I can't remember the deal, but I do remember this one particular couple that had been, no, we're not going to buy. There was a particular property they were interested in, and they wouldn't make an offer on that until after July 1. And so they waited. July 1 happens, and then all of a sudden another buyer who we weren't known to us, and I was selling back then, not buying, another buyer steps in and they had to fight with them. They ended up paying 20 grand more.
Oh, no. That's sad.
But that's real example of
that is
waiting.
I was selling more than the money they come in. Yeah. Look, we had a buyer a while ago. She was really close to being ready to purchase. She, saved the deposit, pre-approval was lined up, found a few properties, but she got really spooked by talk of all sorts of schemes, Help to Buy scheme, decided to hold off for a few months. She thought she'd be able to access a shared equity program and reduce her repayments, which I'm not sure that thinking was very well thought out. But 9 months later, the scheme hasn't launched. All the properties that she had been looking at had gone up in price. Interest rates have crept up. And to make matters worse, her income had increased enough to knock her over the eligibility threshold, which is great, really good to have an increase in income. But now she didn't qualify. So not only did she miss out on the window to buy, the kind of property that would have suited her, she no longer qualified for the incentives that she'd been banking on.
Oh, my God. Look, this is not a lone case, actually. We've heard dozens of cases like this. There's smart, proactive people.
We did an podcast episode on this. Remember, I had a client that, the way that the schemes interacted, they didn't understand, and they actually did themselves out of everything.
And this is the problem when you focus in anything that you're planning, any big planning, when you because these people aren't lazy or uninformed, it's just really focusing, putting too much effort on one thing, one aspect of the whole picture, which is why we want to broaden your thinking out and really teach you about everything in the right order so that you don't sort of overly focus on one thing and you think that, that one thing is going to give you a better deal without realizing that actually other things are happening in the meantime that are much more important. You need to be looking at all of these things, not just that one thing, because, they're standing still, they're not doing anything, but the market's moving without them. It's just terrible.
You're not in control of the market. Nobody's in control of the market. Nobody influences the market. But okay, so we've given you some warnings. We've talked about some of the risks, but what can you do instead of waiting? Because what we want to do is make sure that you've got options and you're thinking things through, and you're not just sort of stuck in that decision limbo, going, "Oh, what should I do?" So, what should you do if you're feeling uncertain about whether to wait or to move forward? Now, the first thing is, as Veronica said, shift your focus away from trying to time the market or guessing what the next incentive will be. Instead, ask better questions of yourselves, right? Are you financially ready to buy? That's the main one, right? Don't worry about the free money or the incentives. Are you financially ready to buy? Do you understand your borrowing capability and the buffers that you'll need? And we do go into this a lot in the money module, which is also part of preparation. Have you researched where you want to buy and what's realistic? And are you buying for the right reasons? And can you hold the property for the long term? Because property is not a short-term flipping. There's heaps of shows on Netflix and Foxtel and all of the streaming services of people who are making money out of flipping. Not everyone makes money out of flipping. A lot of people lose a lot of money. So short-term turnover, not a great strategy. These are all questions we help you answer in the course. It's not just about theory or, market chatter. It's real, practical, step by step. And the decision to buy now or wait a little longer, it should be your decision and for your reasons.
Yeah. And look, that's it really. I mean, empowerment from education, not from waiting.
Yes.
I mean, look, don't get us wrong. If waiting is right for you,
yes,
then waiting is right for you, right? But don't wait for the wrong reasons. And I think that's the important thing here. In fact, in step 5 of what we call the PACE system is revise. If you're looking at the video, it's behind us. I'm trying to point to it. It's revise and correct, right? And that we encourage you to wait at different times to make sure that you are about to make the right decision. But so it's important to understand the process, your numbers, your goals, and then you'll realize you don't have to rely on a handout or a hope, right? And if you do have to, well, that's different. But not everyone does, right? And we just want to encourage you not to if you don't have to, right? You can create your own buying power. You'll know when the right opportunity shows up rather than waiting for a scheme that might never come or might push prices up even further or might preclude you from it because of the criteria.
Yeah. All right. So let's wrap up, Veronica. The main thing here is don't let uncertainty hold you back. As we say, if you're ready, don't wait if you can. So we're not saying you should ignore incentives. Absolutely not. They can absolutely help, but don't put your life on hold waiting for them. You could be missing out on opportunities on properties that tick a lot of your boxes right now. And if you can financially afford them, then if you wait, you might have a hell of a lot more competition once those incentives come in, and that property might just be pushed way out of your price range.
And this is the thing, we actually don't know what is immediately in front of us. Like the market, like Megan said earlier, we're not in control of it. I'd like to think we are, but we are not, right? Mm-hmm. And so whenever you are ready to get onto the ladder into the right property and you can afford it, that's the time to do it. Because if you miss that window, that's mortifying. That has lifelong implications, right? So we really encourage you to not try to control the things that you can't control and only control what you can. So if you're not sure how to tell whether you're ready, right? And that's, I guess, again, that is exactly why we built the course, because we want to take the guesswork out and replace it with clarity and confidence. And you can definitely get onto the website, homebuyeracademy.com.au, and take a look at it. Take a look at what's involved and included in the program, because really you can save so much time and money and stress if you just get it all in the right order. And we're here to help you.
Absolutely. All right. So until we talk to you next week, stay informed, stay calm, and remember, you've got this. We are here with you and we will guide you through. Too many first-time buyers are leaving money on the table and hurting their future selves because they don't know how to do things in the right order. That's what we do. We teach you the exact steps you need to take and support you along the way.
We help you move from a state of information overload to feeling excited and in control. You'll learn a clear step-by-step process that takes the guesswork out of buying your first home. You'll know exactly what to look for, who to talk to, and how to navigate every stage with confidence, avoiding costly rookie mistakes along the way.
We've created Your First Home Buyer course, a 10-module self-paced course plus online mentoring. Now, the course only costs $990 and you get direct access to us every week. You can share the link of any property you're thinking of buying and we can help you work out whether it's an A, B or C grade or a no-go zone. We even help guide you through your negotiations.
Trust us, you will buy a hell of a lot better with our guidance and you'll overpay a lot more than the cost of the course if you don't know what you're doing.
Thanks for joining us. If you've enjoyed this podcast, we encourage you to join our Facebook group. It's called Your First Home Buyer Guide Australia and it's your opportunity to connect with us and ask us your questions, which we will answer. Meaning you can make sure that you're not getting led down the garden path. We hope to see you there soon.